Keep it up, Deion, and you may even get a Colorado helmet on the Voice of College Football shelf. Well, primetime hit Dallas-Fort Worth last Saturday at 11 a.m., and primetime may hit the Pacific time zone on a regular basis based on the way that they played on Saturday. And then also, of course, primetime will eventually swing east in 2024. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We break down the game we all love each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. All right, that was impressive. I know TCU's not going to be as good, most likely, this season as they were last year when they made it all the way to the national championship game. Still, Sonny Dykes, good program, still a capable team, one that I predicted to go 8-4 this season, maybe 6 or 7 wins. They've got some issues, there's no question about that. Defense, and Chandler Morris certainly did not look like Max Duggan on Saturday. But let's focus on what the Buffaloes accomplished and Deion Sanders in particular. This was astonishing. This was impressive. Think about it. A turnover of 68 players from a program that won one game last year, was most likely the worst Power 5 program team last year in 2022. And so Deion Sanders knew that he had to shake it up and bring in better players. But to bring in really good players, that's difficult to do. Of course, first and foremost, he brought in the number 1 rated player in the recruiting class from 2 years ago, Travis Hunter. He's a good selection for a Heisman possibly at this point. Man, he showed to be an elite athlete. That's the first time that I've seen Travis Hunter play, and he's special. He is really, really special. And also, he loves to play football. He must, because he took every snap, basically, 141 snaps between offense and defense. The last guy that I remember doing anything close to that is Ohio State wide receiver defensive back Chris Gamble, who used to play just about every play, and he would typically log about 110 to 115 snaps. 141 in that heat. It was like 90 degrees at kickoff and just got hotter and hotter and hotter with more humidity. So just a remarkable performance from Travis Hunter, but probably a second to Shedeur Sanders, Deion's son. Think about this. This was his first game ever at Colorado, and they've been playing football in Boulder for how long? 100 years plus? And he set the all-time passing record. He completed 81% of his passes, and most of them early were dinks and doinks and so forth and so on. That's still extremely impressive because he delivered the ball and he executed the plays. He did take 2 shots in the first quarter. The first one down the left sideline to Travis Hunter was a poorly thrown ball, the worst ball that he probably threw the entire day. Poorly thrown, underthrown, wobbled, and then the next one, though, they took a shot just a couple series later to Travis Hunter down the right sideline, and this was the worst play of the day for Travis Hunter because he dropped a perfect throw. He did have to dive for it, but was right in the cradle, dropped it. And then I thought, well, Shedeur delivered that throw. That was impressive. And again, most of it was short stuff, but as we made our way into the second half, he started to deliver the ball down the seams, a lot of back shoulders down the right sideline in particular, or his right sideline. Just a remarkable performance for a number of reasons. Okay, we talk about Travis Hunter. 11 catches, 119 yards. We're going to see his Heisman candidacy take off from here. We shall see what this looks like from here. And it's the same thing with Shedeur Sanders, who at this point, and I've not reviewed the other performances from the weekend, but he's got to be number 1 in the Heisman Trophy race at this point after 1 week. I know it's only 1 week, but still 510 yards, an all-time record at Colorado. And he was accurate, and he made the decisions he needed to make in his first game against Power 5 competition on the road. He's got arm talent. And again, this was more about not just the talent, because Colorado, we knew coming into this, is not a deep roster. And they are going to be overmatched at times in the Pac-12 against the better teams in pockets. But in other pockets, they're pretty special with some really good players. So we saw Jimmy Horn contribute quite a bit. Horn and Xavier Weaver are the incoming transfers from South Florida. Horn caught 37 passes for the Bulls last year, 2 touchdowns. He caught 11 for $117 on Saturday. Their stats are just going to skyrocket. For the first time in school history, 4 100-yard receiving players, including the running back Edwards. Weaver caught 53 for South Florida last year, caught 6 on this day. The offensive line. Now that was not as surprising that they had skilled players that showed up to that degree, but it was in the trenches. Now I know they gave up over 500 yards of total offense, and Chandler Morris missed a ton of throws. They could have given up close to 700 yards of total offense, but before they started to wear down in the fourth quarter, and I think that had to do with depth, lack of depth, and it had to do with the heat and just it becoming that kind of game, a back and forth kind of game. I was impressed more so than the sheer talent of Sanders and Hunter and others, and those 2 guys in particular. I was impressed with Deion Sanders. Got to give it up for him. He had this team prepared, and of course his coaching staff had much to do with that as well. First games are difficult for every team. Besides the offensive line and a ton of false starts, this team tackled. I was surprised at the tackling proficiency of this Colorado defense. Also, they didn't blow coverages. Yeah, TCU made some big plays, gained yardage, but there were not blown coverages in this game. And so this was a very tightly executed game on both sides of the ball for Colorado. And for just throwing a team together with 68 new players, that's an incredible feat. I am thoroughly impressed with Deion Sanders during game and preparation and so forth. Now, after the game, he went after the one reporter. I'm not familiar with their history, but apparently there were things that were stated in an article that Deion Sanders did not like. He said, I combed through that article, and do you believe in us now? Well, it's not the media's role to believe in a football team. That's we cover and those beat writers in particular that cover teams on a day-to-day basis. They're not fans, Deion. Get that straight. That was a silly statement to make. Just stick to coaching the football team, and you're doing a great job. But it's not our obligation or our role to be rooting for you or believing in you or having faith or trust in you. It's one game. It was mighty impressive, but it's one game. Yeah, it was such a well-played game, and on defense, there were some holdovers as I looked through the roster and kind of matched players to see where they came from. Like Marvin Ham, probably the best defender on this day, is a holdover from the Colorado team of the former coach. Shiloh Sanders as well. And then you had Miles Slusher from Arkansas. You had Devontae Bentley coming in from Clemson. This team, so I picked them to go 4-8. I figured 1-11, they're so much better. Even though they're throwing this group of players together, they're going to get better throughout the season, and they'll go 4-8, probably 2-7 in the Pac-12. Well, now I'm thinking more like 6, 7, 8 wins. And what's going to be interesting more than the record is when this team is ready to play, when they've got it going. Sure, they're going to have some rough goes in the Pac-12, you would think, when they're not hitting on all cylinders on offense, and the defense gets exposed, and the offensive line play gets exposed by certain teams, maybe a Washington, if they play the Huskies, teams like that are a little bit more stout, Utah. But they're going to jump up and really challenge and possibly pick off a couple of the favorites in the Pac-12. They can be that good on occasion. Now we'll get to see this game in context as we go down the road, as we see Colorado coming up. Another huge Fox noon showcase game against the Huskers of Nebraska, and this time in Boulder. And then we're going to see how TCU plays the rest of the year. So exciting, interesting. I got to say I was fascinated by the play of this Colorado team. We did a watch party, and I really, while I'm typically watching 3 or 4 games at the same time, could just focus on Colorado personnel. The first touchdown, well-designed play where the Kent State offensive coordinator came in. He's done a remarkable job, obviously, in helping Deion Sanders mold the offense. And the first touchdown call was a thing of beauty. They took their 2 biggest threats on the field, Horn and Sanders, and they had them on the left side, and they just crashed down like they were running slants, and it just tied up the traffic in the middle of the field. They ran the back around the end. I think it was Edwards. He just ran a wheel route. He was wide open. Well, for the final touchdown that won the game, they did the same thing, except for it probably wasn't picked up by TCU. Probably should have been, but they ran it slightly different. Different players, and they had trips, not just 2 wide receivers, trips to the left, did the same thing. Easy touchdown. Colorado Buffs, fascinating story. They're 1-0. They've matched the win total from last season. Your thoughts on Deion Sanders, what he's brought to Boulder, what he's brought to college football, coaching in the Pac-12, coaching in the big time. Will they be a threat? I think maybe not for the entire season for a championship, but who wants to play this team? They've got some tough ones coming up. Oregon and USC are at the outset of the Pac-12 schedule. This is fascinating. Love your thoughts. Leave them down in the comment section below. Right here at the Voice of College Football.